Welcome, welcome everyone. We will get started here in just a few minutes. So we are excited to have you join us, hopefully on Facebook, as well as our Zoom. So we'll be started here in just a few minutes. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are so excited to welcome you into the room and into our space. My name is Jewell Gooding. I am the Executive Director here at Silence the Shame. And we're just excited to join us for this evening's community conversation, New Year, Better You. How many mantras have we come up with to really kind of bring into the new year, right? And it's like, now it is unfortunate, right? Because we have just another year of creeping into the pandemic. But if you are hearing my voice, then that means you have another year creeping into the pandemic. So looking at perspective, right? And gratitude and looking at ways to stay on a more positive note because things are what they are, right? It's a lot of things we have no control over, but our perspective, that is something that we can have some control over. However, if you're like me, then your new year starts in February because January was a wash for me. It was just, that was a lot. So we're just going to start in February so I can be more intentional with healthy goal setting. So I'm happy to really start February 1st. And we just go start that whole new year thing all over. But I am excited to bring to you guys just a wonderful panel of experts to tell you how you can be more intentional for your February 1st new year, right? And really think about our health and think about things that we can do so that we can continue to have a positive perspective, even in amongst the chaos and the crisis and everything that we may be dealing with. So let's just jump right into it. Would love to just start with Dr. RENNEE, if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are welcoming us on this evening.
Hi, I'm Dr. RENNEE. I am a medical doctor, but I don't practice medicine in the traditional sense. I actually talk about health and wellness on platforms like this, in magazines and newspapers, on television, on radio. And you can find me everywhere at Ask Dr. RENNEE, and people ask me a whole lot of stuff. But my mantra, because there's so many, I told Ashanti the other day, is New You in 22. I heard that on TV. And so I like that one. But I'm going to talk to you about your physical health today.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Dr. RENNEE. So yes, that health education is super important. So really excited to hear some tips that we're going to practice for this new year. So yes, New You 2022. Let's go with that one for a little while. Laura, you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, good evening. I'm so glad to be here with you all today. I look forward to learning and listening and sharing as well. So I am a licensed professional counselor. I've been in private practice for about 20 years and have worked in psychiatric to substance abuse recovery to other treatment type of programs and modalities in private practice. And so as you can imagine and understand, it's probably been my busiest last 2 years that I've ever had in my entire career. The blessing though is that people are talking about mental health in a way that is so much more open and accepting and inquisitive. And so I am so happy and really proud to be able to share whatever knowledge I've accumulated over my professional lifetime. And I look forward to hopefully sharing that with you today in a way that feels comfortable and succinct and motivating.
I love it. Love it. Really connecting that mind and body and remembering that you're just one person, right? So making sure we can take up that one person. So last but certainly not least, Danielle, you please just tell us a little bit about yourself and what we get to learn from you on today.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Danielle Jackson. I am a health promotion specialist. I have a background in nutrition education, community-based programs, and food insecurity or nutrition insecurity, however you want to look at it. I currently work for a nonprofit community farmers market under the Fresh Market Markets here in Atlanta. We are the first and only transit-based farmers market system in low-income, low-access areas. So today I will be talking about nutrition and how to remain healthy throughout this pandemic and throughout your lifestyle.
Absolutely. I love it. And I do love, looking at that aspect for, a lot of us are dealing with a lot, right? Many of us are in some shape or form. So, but just think about if you're struggling and you have employment, if you have a grocery store, for the most part, that has what you need and getting access to what you need, that's healthy and resources that are around you. But what about those who don't, right? What are some things that we can do that you don't have to have all of the resources to take care of you and what is limited? Now, naturally, we're going to always advocate that those resources become available to you, but just a good way to think about what are some ways you can focus on healthy you across the spectrum, wherever you are in regards to your resources. So thank you, ladies. I look forward to this conversation. As many of our conversations to really educate our communities overall. So yeah, let's just jump right into this. And it's really, what we've talked about, things that it has happened since about 2019. It has significantly impacted our minds, our bodies. There was a phase where, you were quarantining and those snacks was quarantining with you. I really fell in love with the powdered donuts, y'all, and it was a little rough, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. February 1st. So anyone just kind of describe some of the side effects you have seen in your particular work. And actually, I want to start with you, Laura, because I know that you've had an uptick in your work. So can you just talk a little bit about that for me?
Yes, I can. So the uptick that I saw, the positive uptick was that people were inquiring. People wanted to know, how do I get support? I am stressed, and I've been actually stressed for a long, long time, but it feels like it's at a level now that I can't manage it alone. And so what do I do? Which, that's such a hard thing for people to get over that hump, to say, I need help, but I have no idea what to do. What is the difference between a psychiatrist versus a medical doctor versus a psychologist versus a therapist versus you can see, right? And it was important for me to listen and to help people say, all right, or help people guide them to where they might find the most immediate impact for what they were needing, right? So the uptake was the inquiry. Then it was, how do I reach out? What kind of support can I get? And that gets a little bit trickier, right? So if I were going to have a takeaway for anyone who is considering therapy, please don't wait, or therapeutic services, please don't wait until you are actually in a crisis. When we are in a crisis mode, it is difficult to filter information. It is difficult to focus on what we need immediately. And so if you have that inquiry now, and you can get a little bit more information so that even if you put it off, you'll know where to go. So that was an uptick that was positive. Another uptick around what I saw in my work is that when people were coming to me and I was doing the assessments, they would say, my alcohol consumption is way up. my eating consumption is way up. Like everything is in excess, because these coping skills or these coping tools that I have at my reach, I want to change the way that I feel. I'm afraid. I have these cravings. I don't know what to do with all of this. And so with anything, especially alcohol and or drug use, I didn't want my clients to have a layered issue, right? So if the depression or the anxiety starts to decrease, but then we have increase in addiction or something like that, then that's a whole nother bag, right? So it was important for me as a provider to help my clients look at what ways were they coping, what was working for them, what was working against them.
That's very interesting, and just kind of think about those aspects. So Dr. RENNEE, just kind of talk a little bit about, that the side effects of the health and thinking about how our mental health also impacts our physical health, and how those cravings and thoughts and needing to cope maybe maladaptively can also impact our physical health.
So definitely. So first of all, why we are in this mess that we've been in for the last 2 years, COVID, unfortunately, underlying conditions, obesity is one of them. So a lot of people, especially in our community, were getting COVID, and unlike other people, they weren't just passing through it, they were dying because of the fact that they had obesity. And obesity leads to a whole lot of things. And so, all these extra COVID pounds, you need to be careful, because they do lead to hypertension, which is high blood pressure, which we already have a horrible propensity for as Black people, right? And then, so diabetes. So those are like the biggest 3 things that they said were causing people to die from COVID were diabetes, hypertension, and obesity, which obesity causes usually the other 2 to happen. So it was really important that we kind of, it was awful, but it was kind of a wake-up call to a lot of people. I hated to see it and hear it, but a lot of people didn't know when the doctor asked, when they showed up for, with COVID at the ER, do you have underlying conditions? No. And then they said, well, you said you take this medication. What do you take it for? High blood pressure. Oh, well, then you have an underlying condition. You have high blood pressure. A lot of people didn't know that. They just never heard the terminology. And so it was just a wake-up call to a lot of people. People didn't realize that food is actually medicine. And if you eat the right things, you can actually probably not have to take the medicine, because your blood pressure will be controlled, your diabetes could be controlled, could go into remission. So that's why it's so important that we tackle these issues. And I personally can speak from experience, being diagnosed with clinical depression in the 9th grade. I know for a fact that food was my friend. And I also knew that the depression was not going to get better because I ate more. It usually got worse. So, so you really, it all ties in together, your moods. If you don't feel like getting up to, you don't have to do a whole lot of, you don't have to do a 3-hour exercise program. You could just walk for 30 minutes or dance for 30 minutes. And it doesn't even have to be a consecutive 30 minutes. But when you're depressed, I know, and I know Laura knows as well, those people don't feel like moving. I completely understand and know you don't feel like waking up. You don't feel like getting out of bed, let alone do you feel like lifting a leg to do something extra. So, it all ties in together. And, like Jewell said, we have one body. We are one person. We can only do so much, but you need to take care of this one body before it runs out on you. Because I always tell everyone, this is not a dress rehearsal. We have one life. This is it. So you better do this one really, really well.
Absolutely. And to your point, you're absolutely right. Particularly with depression, it can be paralyzing, right? It's that double-edged sword. It's like you can get more energy if you can exercise, but you got to find the energy to actually go exercise, right? So it's a difficult battle. So, but Danielle, you want to kind of just share a little bit about kind of what you're seeing. And, we've talked about how food and the relationship that we have with foods, and sometimes how it seems like it's helping, right? Because it makes us feel good. I feel really happy when I eat a powdered donut. My body probably does not, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, I like that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Within my work, even before the pandemic, the United States was experiencing food insecurity at a percentage of like 11%. And so within the pandemic, more families became food insecure, and that's between 15 and 18%. And that might be even increased just as we're speaking today. So I think that we realize more than ever that people are in need of certain things, and nutritious food is one of them for them to function every day. So within my work, we made sure that our markets were accessible to everyone. So we opened them up during the winter season. We used to be open in the spring all the way through the end of the year, but we took it upon ourselves to open up for a year-round market. And we also partnered with some other nonprofit organizations to provide shelf-stable foods for individuals at no cost. We provide the fresh produce, and then they get shelf-stable things to go with that fresh produce. As well as partnering with the food bank so that people can make sure that they are, if they're eligible for SNAP benefits or EBT, that they can get those benefits and use them at our markets or wherever their closest grocery store is. And then we also took the cap off of the SNAP benefits and EBT for those families so that we could double their amount that they would receive. So if they were to swipe their card for $10, they're able to receive $20. So it was just a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, kind of like Ms. Laura was saying, like we've seen some upticks and things and some things that we needed to work on so that we could make sure that we were providing for the communities.
Absolutely. So it's really when we talk about some of those challenges and the things that we talk about, we didn't talk about mental health before, right? Now we always talk about it. We're always saying, I'm stressed out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm frustrated, I'm exasperated, I'm exhausted, right? We're using all of those feeling words, which is great, which is what we're trying to do like mental health advocates for myself for years. So to hear it, that is a positive. And I know, the circumstances surround it, not so much. And I do joke about, eating so much, right? And having that poor relationship, but actually seeing the opposite side of that, right? So those families, as a result of already dealing with poverty and not having access, and there were a lot of great resources that came out of this, right? So it's that pros and cons. But when we think about the impact in our lives, right? And our bodies and our minds and how we are really engaging and connecting, I think that really does kind of put things in perspective for us. So kind of appreciate you all for sharing that and just kind of being candid in what we're seeing and wanting to say, no, everything is not all bad, right? But to think about how we have changed our behaviors in order to adapt, right? And I know we're constantly saying, oh, I just want to go back to normal. Well, that's a wash, right? Normal is not necessarily going to come back in any form of fashion. So it is accepting and adapting to some of the changes that are pretty permanent in our lives. Hopefully we are washing our hands more frequently, right? And paying attention to how we're interacting with people, but also remembering too how important it is to stay connected to people and doing so more intentionally. So I do think about, we have that moment where we want to actively make those healthy decisions and changes in our lives. And usually you'll see it like the uptick in the gym memberships, right? And you see more people going around the parks and they're buying all of this healthy food, which now is scarce, right? Because that's the other challenge. Our stores are in stock, this whole pandemic that we're just all frustrated and the world is short staffed, y'all. I just want y'all to know that. So please be patient and kind to those people out in the community because they are doing the best they can. I just want to throw out that real quick. But the idea though is what happens, right? What happens in our brain when we have this great ambition, this great motivation? I am going to lose weight and I'm going to eat healthier, or I'm going to connect with people more. What happens after a certain amount of time when that motivation starts to dwindle? Why do you think we lose some of that ambition? And do you feel that it has been more difficult with the lingering pandemic to get people more motivated? I hear a lot of times it's like, oh, we've been quarantining, so we should have been doing a lot of things with this time. But yet you don't necessarily have that, right? Instead, you have more people who are feeling hopelessness and helplessness. So would you all just like to share? And let me start with you, Dr. RENNEE.
So I was one of the people that was every week during the beginning of the pandemic. I was on live streams for different companies, and I was like, please don't come out of this worse than you went in it. That was my philosophy. And I was religiously believing that and was like, please. And I understood, everyone needs a moment because it was a lot. I literally was in my apartment by myself for 14 weeks. And when I say by myself, I'm talking about with my own person, and that's it. When people made deliveries, I told them knock at the door and leave it on the stoop. I had zero contact. And so I had a moment, and then I was like, okay, but we got to get out of the moment. And so I was like Jewell. My thing was saltines and golden grams, but so I understood that. But and unfortunately, even outside of a pandemic, by the third week of January, the gyms usually notice a decline, and Weight Watchers meetings ain't quite as full as they were. Things start going down. Not in a pandemic. So put the pandemic on top of it, I'm sure maybe it was in the second week. I hate to say it, but you have to really, my thing, just like with the whole COVID thing, they said, please wear a mask, not for you, for others. Think about the other people that rely on you and say, I got to do something. Not to mention if you have people that are watching you, like, you have children, nieces, nephews, godchildren, do something and think about, okay, well, they're watching me, so I do kind of need to keep it together. And so I literally was like, well, we I'm trying to encourage, and I'm trying to listen myself. And I had a yoga mat out the whole time, that 14 weeks, and never got on it. But I had the best of intentions, and I just never made it. So I'm curious to hear what Laura says. What is going on in our minds that tricks us into, well, tomorrow, next week, next month, I'm not even sure.
Yeah, so please, Laura, share.
So all of this is incredibly relatable, and not from a perspective only because, oh, I'm a therapist and I've seen this with my clients, like myself as well, right? So it would be really interesting as a therapist to be like, I know this is good for me. I know that if I go out and take a walk, I know if I put these tortilla chips down, it will be in my best interest, and they keep calling me, right? So around food, like I know RENNEE, Danielle, all of us, but these foods are popular for a reason, right? And they are created for us to want more, right? So that's one thing. I already know that, but it is hard. But temporarily there was a boost to it, right? The crunchiness of it, the saltiness of it, it was comforting until later on, my doctor's like, oh, your blood pressure is up, right? What are you doing? Did you know that you gained 15 pounds? And I didn't know until you put on them jeans that you hadn't put on. And it's not always about the size, right? Because everybody has a different reason why they want to engage in exercising or whatever. But what really called to me was my doctor saying, do you understand that you do have this history in your family? Do you understand that I will have to put you on medication? And do you understand that this is, I love to have those kind of doctors. I have a Black female doctor. She does not play around. She's like, these are the numbers here, right? So get it together. And I'm like, but it's a pandemic. And she's like, I know. And all the more reason to get it together, right?
And numbers don't lie.
They do not lie. Nobody want to see that printout. I was like, all right, Emory Portal, I don't want to see that all highlighted and bold. But to the fact of the motivation, right? It's so interesting, the psychology around the end of a calendar year and the beginning of a new one, this fresh start, right? But I also think about, so that gets people motivated. I didn't do what I was going to do in 2021, but I'm sure going to do it in 2022, right? And then after 2 to 3 weeks, like, well, like you said, when my new year starts in February, because we're going to have these ups and downs. But I do think it's so important not to go into the all or nothing type of thought, which is, I wanted to do this. And I know my question is about resolution, and I'll talk more about it, but it's this I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. I succeeded or I failed. And if you set things up that way, more than likely, I don't even want to start trying, because I was doing Sean T for a minute. He was motivating me, and I haven't logged on to see my boo in a minute, right? But I feel like when I do, he will meet me where I am. So I have this thing on my refrigerator that says start today. And my son's in college and my daughter's in college. And I'm like, what does this mean? I said, it means start today. It's a reminder that I can log on to Sean T and he will be there for me when I'm ready, right? So, but we do tend to fall off. Hopefully when we do fall off and our motivation isn't as strong as it was, we could be patient and kind and have grace, but also look at what is that about. I also think about winter, and I'll try to keep it brief, but this is like a dormant period, right? You think about flower bulbs and you think about animals and everybody's hibernating. And so we're in this hibernation season, but yet we're also in this season where you're supposed to meet all your goals and push it through. And it seems to be an interesting, like, conflict, I guess. I don't know if that's the best word, but you understand it fights against each other. So that's why I try to think about things as this process, and it's never too late, right? So, how do we get back up on that horse or that wagon again?
I like it. Start today, right? Because every day we can start. We're going to start it, right? And just kind of push through. So I can, to your point, very relatable and kind of thinking about, where that motivation comes from and where we can kind of go from. And then, of course, to your point, like, what are those things that are happening around us that's going to really have an impact on, unfortunately, we've lost a lot of people just in January alone, right? And it's like, oh, but it's hard. It's difficult. It's sad. Like Betty White was hard, y'all. And it was trying to really come to terms to that. And even thinking about, the grief and the loss and suicide and mental illness, right? Because we can think about it. I can talk about how we can stay healthy, right? But mental illness is real, right? It's not something that, well, it'll go away. I'm in a period, right? Mental illness is a illness. It's not as easy to kind of dissipate like the cold, right? Depending on where we are, our severities, our resources, how frequently are we feeling this way? These are concrete things. And sometimes there is no reason to feel this way. Sometimes depression comes with challenges, right? It comes with a situation. Sometimes depression is just depression, regardless of what your situation is and what we're experiencing. So just to be mindful of all of those factors as well, too. And just, you hear it takes 21 days to form a habit, and being very consistent with it. I always like the little meme that comes across. It's like, I have literally been exercising and eating healthy for the last 24 hours and I have not lost weight, right? Because we want that immediate gratification. Because I'm like, I really did the whole day. I drank all of my water. I got up every hour and walked, and yet this scale just seemed to get higher. So I'm not sure, but it's also just important to give yourself that grace and understanding to just start today. Maybe the day did not end the way you wanted it to. Things happen and things come up. Discipline is just that. It's discipline. It takes work and practice and effort. So also just thinking of those aspects as well, too. So Danielle, we recognize stress eating is just what we do, right? It's that relationship with food and what we do in order to really support ourselves and our coping strategies. Sometimes that becomes there. So in doing that, because, it's not to say we'll completely get rid of, the eating part, because that's necessary. What are some strategies you think to help people make healthy choices without the burden of counting calories or carbs? Because I think also, to your point, Laura, when you try to add too many things on top of it, that all or nothing, you do end up kind of giving up a lot quicker because you've kind of set yourself unrealistic expectations and say, yes, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to find a husband. I'm going to have 3 babies. It's like, yeah, it's just the first month. So let's slow it down and let's target one thing at a time and just see how we can do that. But just thinking about that, what strategies that you can kind of offer to our network and how we can really do some healthy eating?
Well, I think Ms. Laura and Dr. RENNEE will agree with me, but eating is a form of self-care. Like, we have to nourish our bodies, for comfort and for other things, as well as to be able to live, eat, breathe, and sleep. So we have to look at food as a relationship. Do you have a healthy relationship with food, or do you have an unhealthy relationship with food? If you have a healthy relationship with food, good, congratulations, kudos to you. How do you maintain that? How do you keep it and possibly improve it so that it can remain sustainable? But if you have an unhealthy relationship with food, how do we change that? You know, what do we need to do? I believe that small realistic goals will be the way to go. If you want to increase your water intake, drink an additional 1 cup, 8 ounces, or additional bottle each day. And then you do that every single day for like 2 weeks, and then you increase it again. It might take you 4 to 6 months to get to your goal of what you want with water, but you did it. You created the goal, you made the steps happen, you attained everything that you wanted to attain while you were working on it. So you created those goals for yourself. Another thing I believe is if you meal prep, you will be doing a boatload of good for yourself and your family. Create a list before you go to the store, but make sure you take it to the store with you so that when you go to the store, you have that list. Because I don't know how many times people say, I forgot the list at home. Well, it ain't doing you no good at the house when you're at the store. So make sure you bring that with you so that you can have what you need to actually create those meals at home. And for you to meal prep will be an abundance of you know, spending more time doing what you might or might not enjoy, but at the same time, you know that you're getting some of those foods that are healthier for you. And one last thing, Miss Laura said this, but give yourself grace and celebrate each and every single win. If you were able to go that whole entire day by drinking only water, congratulations, you did it. Like, you are on your way to a healthy lifestyle. We say this thing in nutrition world, 80-20. You know, if most of your foods, 80% of your foods are healthy and nutritious, that 20%, maybe you can kind of get those powdered donuts or whatever it is that you're wanting to have. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be healthy all the time. You will get a chance to go on vacation and have a good time. You will get a chance to go out with your friends and celebrate. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you stay healthy and have those nutritious foods in your life majority of the time. So celebrate each and every accomplishment. So you did good if you didn't have those donuts today, right? But we just want you to be the healthiest version of yourself. So always celebrate your wins, no matter how small you think they are huge in your journey of becoming healthier and your better self.
I love it. I do love it. And, you know, Dr. RENNEE, I know you had mentioned a little bit about this earlier. Just, do you mind just kind of telling us about your physical health journey? So after the 14 weeks, you know, what next steps do we need to take after the 14 weeks? I'm still on week 10. So
Okay.
I got 4 more weeks to get it together. So tell me, what do I need to do?
So you have to do things one thing at a time. You can't just slice everything out and say, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not eating that, and I'm going to do this every day. That's just too much. So my birthday of 2020, I was like, we've had enough. And I hired a trainer. So the trainer came 3 days a week. And did I change my eating? No. And it was even worse because I was with my mom and she snacks, and I don't even snack because snacks don't belong in my house. But then I was snacking. So every night I was eating graham crackers before I went to sleep. So I didn't change my eating. By the end of the year, I said, okay, we got to get this under control. So I do intermittent fasting, works really great for me. That just means that there is a period of time that I eat and there's a period of time I don't eat. So in my usual life, it was from 12 to 8 that I ate, 12 noon to 8 p.m. My new life, I don't eat until 6, 7 o'clock at night. So yes, I go all day without eating. So I said, okay, we got to nip this in the bud. So I started intermittent fasting. Still didn't change what I ate, but I did it within the hours. And I'm gonna tell you a secret. You'd be amazed. You can't eat so many calories when you only have so many hours to eat them in. So even if you're eating some mess, you can only have so many donuts in them hours because you only can chew so fast and swallow so quickly. So that's a secret. Your doctor I didn't tell you that, but I'm just telling you that, but I didn't tell you that. So that was that. Then January came and my sister brought her Peloton. So I incorporated that. So I started exercising even more. The 3 days that he was coming that was all I did was them 3 days. I didn't do any other exercise. I would maybe do my steps, like I would walk outside if the weather was good, but other than that, I didn't do it. But now that the Peloton was here, I worked out more than 3 days a week, probably up to like 7. And then my best friend came along. I have, and I'm gonna look it up and tell you guys, this is a very special water bottle. It reminds me to drink water. It sends me notifications. It lights up on the bottom, all sorts of fancy stuff. This is when I finish today, it will be my 319th day in a row of drinking a gallon of water a day. So I was starting to dwindle away once I got the eating together and the exercise together. Well, when I started drinking the water, I didn't know who was in the mirror. I was like, where am I going? It was happening really, really quickly to me. So now I think I'm down. So I wouldn't get on a scale during the pandemic because it was just no point. I mean, we're still in a pandemic. I wouldn't get on the scale during those 14 weeks. It was just no point. So I am down at 60 something pounds from when I bought a new scale, December of 2020. So I'm down, 70 since I bought the scale. I joined Weight Watchers in February of 2021, and I've lost 50-ish plus or something with Weight Watchers from February 2021 till now. But it really is a one thing at a time. So, I drink a gallon a day. I'm not saying you need to go drink a gallon a day, but I do encourage people to drink half their weight in ounces. So if you weigh 200 pounds, drink 100 ounces a day. And if you can't get to 100, try to get there. And then if sweets are your thing, okay, try to say, okay, only on Saturday I'll have sweets or only on Friday or something. Just try to dwindle it down. If you're a pop drinker, do your best to try and dwindle it down to no pop. Those sugary beverages are horrible. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are worse than her powdered donuts. And that's the truth. So you need to be very careful. I'm not a calorie counter. Weight Watchers provides us with this lovely app, and I put in my food, but you don't have to be on Weight Watchers. My Fitness Pal is amazing. Free app. You do not have to get the premium, but you'd be amazed what happens with tracking your food, because you will become very, 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 what did I tell you earlier? The numbers do not lie. So when you can see in plain sight how many calories you're eating a day, and you've not added or subtracted a number, you just literally scan the food, scan the barcode that was on the box, or typed in the food into MyFitnessPal, I am telling you, it is a game changer. Your eyes will be very wide open when you realize, oh my God, I ate a whole day's worth of food at breakfast. So just change one little thing at a time, and slowly over time, like you said, 21 days to become a habit. Now I have to work out every day. It's just not an option. I have to do something. Recently, Sundays has been the day that I've just been really lazy and haven't done anything. But even my nothing is more than some people's nothing. So, but I just make sure that I do something because I like the results. I tell people I hate working out, but I like the results. So I have not been this small in my adult life. I have 0 clothes to wear because I had to give them all away, because I've just never been this size in my apartment that I lived in. So all those belongings don't work anymore. I don't like shopping, but I'm happy to be happier in this body. I will tell you, you don't know how unhealthy you are until you get healthy. And you're like, wow, I feel really different. Like, I just feel so light. I didn't even know how much I was struggling before until now that I'm not struggling. Climbing steps, just little minuscule things, walking to the mailbox. I mean, 2017 is when I first said, okay, I've got to lose weight. My back was hurting walking in my 650 square foot apartment to the bathroom. Wow. The bathroom wasn't that far.
Wow.
But my back was killing me. And that's when I was like, oh, girl, you got to do something, because I wasn't 40 yet. And I was like, if I can't walk these little 5-10 feet to the bathroom without pain, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So, just please be mindful. And a lot of these illnesses that we have in our, are avoidable. We lost Chadwick Boseman. We've lost most recently, and now I'm drawing a blank. There's another, Kangle Kid. Colon cancer is a preventable cancer and treatable. So you got to be
Great.
mindful what you're putting in your body. And, you
Mhm.
know, like I said, do what works for you, but try to drink more water. I mean, everyone could use more water. Your skin will look fabulous. Your hair will grow. All these, your nails, everything will be a lot happier when you put more water in your body.
Headaches. Oh my gosh. If
Yes.
you just have a headache, stress, just go drink a nice cold glass of water. It's like life just comes into
Yes.
you.
And you know what? Also, if you feel like you think you're starving, drink a glass of water first. You might have just been thirsty. Or
Yeah.
you haven't had enough sleep. I think a lot of people don't realize how important sleep is to the body as well. If you have to set an alarm to remind yourself what time to go to bed and close your eyes and put down the devices, do that, because sleep also helps me lose weight too. I was like, I have to get this many hours sleep. 7 hours is what I try. If I can get that 7 hours, I am golden. But you really, you have to be intentional with it. Meal prepping is amazing. I have a cheat. My sister's a chef and she cooks for us. So that's my cheat. But when I am by myself, I do make my own meals, and meal prepping is amazing because when you don't have to think about it, it's much easier to eat correctly. But when you are sitting there starving and there's nothing prepared, that's when you're going to call Uber Eats, Postmates, or whatever, or you're going to drive to the nearest fast food or whatever. And that's when you get in trouble. So when you planning is the best thing.
All great tips, and hitting all of those self-care things that is always going to be at the top of how we can care for our well-being. Sleeping is number one. When you don't sleep, your body still needs fuel. So what it's going to get as far as fuel is food, right? So, and then you're craving those sugary things to give you that fast energy. So that's how we get all that belly flat, just sitting around doing nothing, just taking up rent for no reason. And you think about it, it's like if I get a better night's sleep, one, I'm not as cranky. I'm not trying to consume as much caffeine, but then it dehydrates you. Do y'all see this pattern, right? Of how our choices are going to impact us, and then our minds and how we're thinking, and making sure that we don't try to eat the entire elephant. You just take it one bite at a time. And it didn't take you overnight to get to where you are. It is not going to take you overnight to change it back. So being graceful and really thinking about what are those steps I need to take, right? Making them very smart, and identifying ways where you can engage. So
And
we had
being
talked
thankful you
about
have a new day. So you messed up
absolutely.
yesterday. There is tomorrow. Don't punish yourself. You know, just realize, but don't let, the mistake today turn into 5 weeks of mistake. Try
Right
and,
there.
pick up the pieces quickly.
Yeah, and even if it turned into 3 days, right?
Right.
That fourth day, can we come back? It's always about that resilience. Come back at some point. You can get to that point. It was like, okay, really, I've been on like a 4 week. Okay, it's still okay. You can still start today. So that's our theme, right? You can always start today. Anytime it does get overwhelming, we fall off the wagon. It gets to be too much. We don't feel like exercising. Our ambition just kind of dwindled off, and going back to, well, what do I really want to do? To your point, Dr. Renee, it's not really loving the exercise, because I mean, there are people I know who do love it. I'm not one of those people, but what I do like is the benefits that you receive from the exercise, right? It's a natural endorphin for mental and physical illness, that natural medicine that you need in your life. So the importance of really just 30 minutes of walking at some point, trying it, even if it's just around your house, if it's just around your building, if it's going up the stairs, if it's at the grocery store, be intentional at the grocery store. Push that cart a little bit faster than you would have any
Park
other
far.
time.
That's my new thing. I park far and go into the grocery store.
It
Park
may be
far
too
from the
cold
door.
out, but
Huh?
find those options.
It's freezing. Look,
Yeah.
it's only 12 degrees here, and I did it today even.
Oh,
But
yes. We're going to get to where you are, Dr. Renee, just in 14 weeks. So, but I encourage you all to see where she is and how she got there. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like all of a sudden it's going to do it. She made the choice.
and
So
numbers don't lie. Let me tell you, because people be look at me and be like, she did. I wore a size 22, 24. I am only 4'11", and now I wear an 8.
wow. So anyone can do it at any
Yes, I
time.
was saying because
And
I know what fat is. Oh, trust me.
and
I
the
told you I'm
impact
only
of that.
4'11".
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So Laura, please tell us how we can make these SMART goals. And, we talk about resolutions, but what's the difference when we talk about a resolution versus goal setting, and how we can be more accountable to what we're doing? Um, just kind of think about that as you are all thinking. And then Laura, help us out with that.
Okay, so I was thinking about that when I saw the question, and so I'm like, let me do a deeper dive. And so you think about the word resolution, to resolve, I either will do something or I won't. And as you see how it's set up, it seems like it's either or, right? There's nothing wrong with putting something into a declarative way, like I will do this, I won't do this, as far as a commitment. But the reality is it's not that simple just to declare, right? So we're looking at, what do I need in order to make this statement fact? I need to set goals. I need to have a process. It's going to be a part of my journey. And I think something that Danielle said earlier is that we really need to celebrate our wins along the way, right? And Dr. RENNEE, I know you can speak to this as well, to say, I'm drinking my water. I don't know why I have two separate water bottles. This is too much plastic, but the idea is that I was going to have water around me so I could calculate on my Fitness Pal how many ounces I'm drinking. And when that bottle is done, I feel good about it. It seems silly in a way, but I'm like, yay, I drank this bottle of water. What's next, right? But not just what's next in a way that bottle doesn't count, but just really being mindful and accepting of this goal. So as far as goal setting, you want to come up with a plan. What is your plan of action? How do you break this down so it feels manageable? And you might need some assistance with this. But one thing I really want to highlight is that it is so important before we start any kind of resolution or goal setting that we take an inventory about where we are. Are we wanting to make some changes because other people are doing it, because this is what's hot on the trend of social media? Or is it because we're afraid? What is it that we really, really want, right? If we are going to, let's say weight loss was the goal. Is the goal because messaging from other people or family or historical references of like, you're not good enough if you are this size? That's not really, that's temporarily motivating, right? And I know Dr. RENNEE, you're talking about like you made a lifestyle change. And that goes so much deeper than just the losing weight. But it's not just losing weight, because that was an amazing journey for you. And it took focus and intentionality was one of my favorite therapeutic words, to be intentional, and commitment. But I know you did that for yourself, right? It wasn't that anybody else had to tell you, well, you would just be more popular or more smarter or this. That's not it, because you already possessed that. You knew you wanted to change your lifestyle, and you found a way to do that, right? And I think about that in regards to anything that we're doing. So what are our goals? How honest are we about what we need in our life and why? Then how do we break it down so it feels manageable? And also understanding that we don't have to do it alone. We can still involve community. We can still involve our friends, as long as they will get on that path with us and keep us encouraged and positive, and not, say, oh girl, you were a loser. I mean, hopefully you don't have friends like that to be like, you lost, or you're a loser because you didn't do this. But to say, it's okay. I understand this is hard, but we're going to celebrate the efforts and look at the wins along the way. So those are just some of the things that I thought about as breaking it down, coming up with your plan, but be honest about why you want to make the changes anyway. If you can't own why you're truly doing something, and if it's only for other people or only because social media says this way, you won't be as successful. And I'm pulling on this from working in residential treatment for drug and alcohol. One of the things I love about 12-step recovery is that it is a recovery process. And one of the principles behind the first step is I have to be honest about that my life is becoming unmanageable and I need to make some changes. I want to be honest about that and own it. And when it gets that personal for you, it can be really scary, but it also can be invigorating as well. So that's just kind of my my way of looking at the difference between goal setting and resolutions.
Absolutely, right. And it is really thinking about, when we talk about SMART goals, right? SMART has an acronym, it's an acronym. It stands for being specific, making sure that it's measurable, making sure it's achievable, realistic, and it has a time frame, right? Giving yourself some deadlines and some aspirational dates to really achieve your goals. It just kind of keeps that motivation going. It keeps that drive going. But Laura just hit it right on the head when she's like, you really got to do that self-inventory, that self-awareness, and figure out, what are you doing this for? Are you doing it because you're like, well, they said I shouldn't be fat anymore. Now, granted, being obese can constantly have other health aspects of it. But at the end of the day, I can tell you, you're not going to be successful until you find that real motivation to say, I want to make a change, right? It starts with how we're thinking about it and what we're going into it with. It doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. There is not a straight line. It is often very crooked, and it falls off and jumps on someone's back at some point. But that is, that journey we call life. We go through these different steps, and we are hit with different things, and we look at conflict resolution, and we're thinking about, what I can do differently that's going to be realistic for me, that's going to be measurable for me, right? Maybe your goal is, I want to stop drinking so much. You know, what does that mean for you? Does it mean that I won't drink at home? Does it mean I won't have certain types of alcohol? What does it mean, right? And it has to be something that is for you. And it's that recovery piece. It's that opportunity to say, I want to be more active in the things that I do, and I want to be more intentional. And it's unfortunately, when we think about that resolution versus the goal, you're putting steps behind that goal versus the resolution, you just kind of resolved it. But how? What exactly you're going to do to get there? And Danielle really talked about, meal preparation, whether it's what you're going to put in your mouth, how often you're going to drink, what you're even going to think about, right? It's all about that preparation and then understanding who you are as a person, what drives you, how do you develop those goals and be more intentional, is something that is important in regards to our well-being and to our wellness. So it's kind of really thinking about that in some healthier ways, that we're still in this, right? This pandemic. So any other strategies that you all want to suggest? I talked a little bit about sleep, and what we're putting into our bodies and how we're limiting it. And also just recognizing everybody's story is going to be unique, right? Dr. RENNEE's journey is Dr. RENNEE's journey, an amazing one at that. But she had to go through that to really be on the other side. And yes, she looks amazing now. But again, if you can even, view her on her website, she had a full journey that she shared along the way, to say that it didn't take it overnight, right? It was a process. And she talked a little bit about that. I started with the trainer. I wasn't changing my eating, right? I did this, but I'm not going to do this. And so it takes steps, and that's okay. So when you talk about new year, new me, new year, new you, what does that look like for you? And let's try to stop comparing ourselves to those social media folks that gives you the very best version of themselves. We often get on our young people for doing that, but our older people does it just as much, right? We compare ourselves to where we think we should be. And sometimes you're comparing yourself to Photoshop. So, that's kind of hard, just to be aware of that. And also really thinking about the concrete things. How are you going to be healthy? And I just want to just start with Danielle. Like, what are some things we can do as far as our nutrition, even for families who are struggling and do not have as many resources and things that they can have access to? I am really going to look for that fancy water bottle. But if you can't get that fancy water bottle, how can you make sure you're getting your water intake like you should?
I would say be intentional about it. Like you said, let's start by setting a goal. If you haven't picked up some water in 3-4 months, Start with 1 cup. Let's just start there. And talking to your family about it, like what goals do your kids want to achieve? Because they have goals too. They see things at school, they see things on television. So allow them to incorporate what the family goals should look like, because as a family, you can collectively make sure that the whole family is healthy if you include everybody. Mom and dad doesn't have to be just the ones making the rules. Let the kids make some of the rules. And I would just say at the end of the day, just continue to show up for yourself. Like Dr. RENNEE said, you might have to go back to the drawing board. Okay, this isn't working. So what else can we do to switch that focus into something that does work? And you might go back to the drawing board 2 times, 3 times, but you're at least trying to do something different, which is making you a better individual. And encourage everybody and continue to give each other grace, because we got to give ourselves grace before we can give somebody else grace. So those are the things that I would say. Just continue to just work on yourself and make yourself better. And at the end of the day, we'll all be, better for it.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. And I think that's one thing. If we don't walk away with anything else, right, it is about intentionality and being graceful to yourself, right? Those are the 2 things that is how you get to that better you, right? It's really that intentionality, and also don't give up on yourself just because you're faltered, right? We're all there. We're human. That's what makes us so great, and it's important to think about that. Dr. RENNEE, and as far as our health and keeping, those perspectives and thinking about our health, not just, what we're doing, but, family histories and understanding that and making sure that we can take care of ourselves, our whole health.
Well, first of all, know your family history. And we just passed the holiday season. That would have been the perfect time to have a lovely conversation at the dinner table so that you knew why so-and-so died at 30 something. And because all these things are very important. Many people don't realize, I remember I said before, colon cancer is something that's preventable. If you had a family member that had colon cancer and they got it at 40, that means at 30, you need to start having colonoscopies. People don't realize that. Prostate cancer is the same way. So it's important to know family history. If you don't know your family history, oh my goodness, I feel bad, because you just don't know what's going on in your body. You could show up at 35, be the picture of health, and have high blood pressure, but can't figure out why. It's because it was a family history. It had nothing to do with what you ate, unfortunately. So very important. But I was also going to say, please, if you need an accountability partner, get one, or 2 or 3 or 10. I'm somebody who's self-motivated. I don't need anybody's help. My motivation is the numbers don't lie. So when I look at the scale and I weigh myself every day, the more you weigh, the less you weigh. That is the philosophy that I adopted years ago, and I stick to it. So when I wasn't getting on the scale, I weighed a whole lot more than now that I get on every day. So that's just me. Not everyone does that work for. So I'm self-motivated by the scale. But other people, you might need somebody. So talk to somebody and say, hey, help me out. I literally went to the doctor and said, I need to know, why am I fat? I am a medical doctor who completely understands exactly what is going on and what the foods I'm eating are doing to my body. And I continue to eat them. And I know I should exercise and I'm not exercising. Help me to understand what is going on. I need help. And I had a fabulous psychologist that worked with me for two to 3 years, I think it was, every Tuesday. And I always say she fixed me, but you may not need a psychologist to figure out what's going on, but I did. And that's how I've been able to take it off. And this time I actually completing my journey of keeping it off. So please do what you have to do, but realize that your family history is so important. And you don't want to have anybody's underlying conditions for any pandemic, particularly COVID. You don't want to have any problems, because it is going to make things far worse. I have severe asthma. I knew that COVID was attacking breathing issues. I don't want to have any more breathing issues. So therefore, I wasn't playing with COVID. But you need to know your history so that you can pass this information on to your children. The only people that don't know their history are those that were adopted, and that they have an excuse to not know their history. But if your mother or father and are living people, then you need to understand somebody needs to talk to somebody, and you guys should probably archive this information somewhere. If you need to shoot videos or write it down, but it's so important for you to know your family history when it comes to your health. You really need to know that. That is key in a lot of these diseases that are killing us at very young ages, because we didn't know we should have been looking for that all this time. Or it could be a rare thing that they should be looking for, and you've been going to the hospital for over a year and the doctor, and nobody can figure out what's going on. But if you had that family history, that would have been the first thing they would have checked, and you could have been cured.
Yep, absolutely. I wanted to stress that just a little bit more. Know your family history, ask the questions, get to know what's going on. And if you can't, understandable, but be the person to give the family history if you're not able to get it. So what do you kind of go through? Having those conversations with folks and letting them know what's going on. I know sometimes we keep on the secrets and we don't want to talk about certain things that may seem embarrassing or overwhelming or in those natures, but then we also miss out on some key history and critical information that can save future lives. So really knowing your history, knowing who you are and what surrounds you, really good point. So thank you so much. And just remember, meet yourself where you're at, right? You can't meet yourself at the 60-pound self if you're not at that 60-pound self person. Start where you need to be and really kind of connect with that. And so Laura, your tips and strategies on how we can kind of keep it together and keep our perspective positive through this pandemic.
Yes, so the positive, I love that word because negativity bias is a real thing. You can see if you go on Twitter, if you look on social media or the news, the negative aspects, the stories or whatever, that's what seems to draw people in. And you would not, unless you really put on the brakes or stop and shut it down, how easy it is to get sucked into the negativity bias, right? So that becomes our own, we can get into our own negativity bias, and we're looking at ourselves and not rewarding ourselves or acknowledging our efforts and praising ourselves because like, well, this isn't good enough, right? As a matter of fact, this bad thing happened and so I want to be stuck here, right? But the truth of the matter is we've been in a grieving and experience for over 2 years now. We have been in a traumatic experience, not just with the pandemic and the loss around that, but with everything with the social justice and uprising and the deaths that we've seen so publicly. And so where is all that emotion going, right? Where is all that hurt going? And a lot of times it's really stored within us, right? So I love books, and there's 2 books that jumped out at me that I'm remembering as we're talking. One I had by me, which is called The Body Keeps Score. And this is a world-renowned trauma specialist. But one of the things that I highlighted is that it takes a lot of emotion, a lot of energy to keep emotion bound up inside. And one of the ways to release that is through movement. Movement could be dance, it could be walking, it could be exercise, it could be so intense or it could be little, but we have got to find ways to let these emotions and this trauma move through us, right? So when people say, oh, you can exercise, think about the benefits of that, not just for your heart rate, but for your emotional wellness. And I understand the trappings. When we're depressed, we don't have the motivation to do a lot, but nobody said that you had to be depressed and run a marathon. You can be depressed, go outside and hopefully get to your mailbox, take in some fresh air and come back. That's a start, right? So these are some of the added benefits. And the other book I'm thinking of that I have back here is called This Is Your Brain on Food. And so, this is not rocket science, right? But it's always interesting when somebody puts it into a book and they're like, oh, national bestseller. But there is a psychiatrist who had breast cancer and decided that she needed to change her whole life through eating. And what she learned in psychiatry and then being a patient for this medical reason is that her nutrition was going to make or break her life. And how was it going to impact the clients that she was working with? So she wrote a book, This Is Your Brain on Food, to address depression, PTSD, OCD, anxiety, ADHD. And it is really interesting. It includes recipes, but I loved it because it was such a wonderful reminder of how if you are eating healthier things, why does it affect our brains the way that it does? What does gut health mean? what shows up if we don't. And so I love that book. I know that it can seem like we're in a privileged position. We're talking about food. It is expensive a lot of times to eat. I want Danielle to speak to this, because if you don't have a lot of money, what can you do? I think people get discouraged. Like, well, I can't go to Whole Foods, so forget it. And there's so many more options out there. So I just think about a holistic approach, and all of the conversation today is just so important, but how we look at our health, how we look at our trauma, how we look at our depression, anxiety, all of this, everything that we're talking about, from eating well to mental health to all of the exercise, like it all goes together, and we can be successful in these categories, and we can get information, educate yourself. So, that's why I love Silence the Shame. Silence the Shame is putting out information all the time in so many wonderful ways. Like, I am drawn to this organization in like a fangirl kind of way, because it is so authentic, so sincere, and so important. I'm not just saying that because Jewell and Shanti are listening and I want to come back. I mean it. Like, I've been following this organization for a hot minute. So the work that it's doing in the communities for education and breaking down the barriers and feeling accessible around this conversation, you can't put a price tag on it. So I think I didn't answer your question, but I had to get that out.
And I did not pay her to say that, y'all. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much. And that's our goal, right? Because I think a lot of times, Shanti is always just very transparent and vulnerable. But the idea is that we just want to know, we want to learn, right? We want to do better. But it's hard to do better if we don't know what to do better. And I think sometimes we have the assumption you turn 18 and there's this book of life that you have everything figured out. And we don't. And our doctors, if we're going, particularly young people, how often are they really going to their doctors to have these conversations? So you're not really going to your regular appointments until your 30s and 40s because stuff is falling apart. So we missed out on healthy ways to take care of ourselves. So I appreciate our conversation today, to be more intentional, to realize that all of our journeys are going to look different. But some really great key points that were really brought up. Education, yes, is absolutely at the forefront. It starts there. Self-awareness, right? And really understanding who you are, understanding your history, your families, what's surrounding to you, understanding your resources, and understanding what those markets look like in the community that Daniel was referring to, and how we can have with so much food insecurity and food deserts where we don't have access to fresh foods and whole markets. I can't go shop in those areas. I have 3 kids. It can be very expensive. So how can you be more unique in creating those resources for your kids and getting them to healthy family dieting or a family healthy living, right, is always important. There is nothing more annoying than while I'm trying to diet and my kids eating fruit snacks, I'm like, I gotta want some fruit snacks. But it's if you create what goes on in your household, then you don't have to feel like, oh my God, I'm depriving myself. It's being that intentional and creating the family environment. They can become your accountability partner. My kids remind me all the time, Mom, you're dieting. Thanks, kid. I really wanted to enjoy these bag of chips, but okay, I'll put them up because now you're going to remind me I'm dieting again. So thinking of those unique ways to really doing that. Preparation, we heard a lot about. Being more prepared, meal prepping. If you cook the night before, cook enough for 2 nights. If you're not let's do a whole week meal prep, just do it for 2 days. Let's start slow. Do it for the next day. Make your lunch the next day so you're not starving the next day. Think of different, options for weight loss. Dr. RENNEE talked about intermittent fasting. Does that work for you? There are different types of fasting that you can do. She talked about one. There are several different, and if you want to do the carb, if keto is something that people talked about. Keto's not for everybody, so you don't have to do it because that's the hottest word that you're hearing right now. Figure out if it works for you. Weight Watchers, that can be expensive. I did Weight Watchers so many different times, and I just stopped because we weren't working. So it just didn't work out, but having that accountability partner, and it doesn't have to be someone to say, let's go walk, but maybe a pet, right? You got to walk your dog. So let's make sure if we have something that, hey, if the dog's got to walk. So finding different things that you can do, and being more intentional, understanding who you are and what you have and resources you have to you, and being smart about it, right? Don't try to just do everything at once. That's when we find failure, right? If you didn't have a good day, don't give up and throw everything out. Just start today, right? Just say, this is my goal for the day. If you start just one goal a day, today I'm going to drink more water. So when we talk about smart, being specific, I want to drink 2 more bottles of water than I have in the last 2 days. And I want to do that for the next 5 days. And let's see what that comes up and how do I feel, right? That's a very smart goal that you can try to really come up with. You have been very specific. It's measurable how much you're going to do. It's attainable, it's realistic because it's just that one day. It's only 5 days. You're trying to put yourself in there and you got that deadline in there, right? So that's how you create that very smart goal, always just for you. But just remembering, what's that motivation, that ambition, what got you there, is always important, and how successful you might be able to be. So I just want to see if there are any questions from our audience. We're going to be wrapping up here soon, guys. But I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any questions from our audience, because our conversations are for you as well, guys, and making sure you get a chance to come in. Great comments. I'm very excited that we had some really great engagement on this evening, just to kind of talk about things that we don't want to talk about all the time, right? But just to get some of that education and resources. Just hearing from you ladies, it's been just kind of really great. So I do encourage you all, though, if you do have questions, utilize that Q&A function in your chat, and feel free to ask any questions. Dr. RENNEE shared just her journey, if you want to see how she kind of got through that, as well as her fancy cup that I'm going to look it up in just a second, because I would love a reminder. For me, if you're like me and you're working from home and you sit at your laptop all day and you forget to get up and walk, that might be helpful. So just some things.
Forget to eat.
Yeah, sure. I say I do fasting too, just because I forget to eat.
Right, but no, that was me. I would forget to eat, and then when I remembered, I just ate everything I could think of. But
yep,
I would start eating around 2 o'clock and just keep on going.
Keep eating, right? And then of course you're like craving, because like that 2 o'clock, you're tired and you're just trying to shove whatever is going to give you whatever you need to get through it. And then 20 pounds later, you're like, what just happened? But yeah. And thinking about, what obesity leads to, and that is unfortunate. You had more folks that said they didn't have underlying issues, but they were obese, right? That still kind of suffered some of the tragedies we've seen for the last few years. So I know we did have some thoughts about suicide, and just remembering, this is a critical point, right? There has been a significant amount of loss, whether that is people, whether that is things, whether that is just comfort, right? Knowing where we were and having that uncertainty can really lead to a lot of helplessness, hopelessness. I know there's been just kind of questioning science and points where people are like, I just don't know what to believe, right? So many varying emotions out there. And regardless of whatever that you feel, just remembering to practice self-care for you. Danielle talked about it as well too. And that's life, right? Really having that piece of it. Any last words, ladies? I'm not seeing any other questions come through that you just want to make sure that everybody knows and do every day, or just being aware of who you are, how folks can get in contact with you if they want to have more questions and resources. Love for you all just to kind of do a round table and put all of that out there. And Dr. RENNEE, I'm just going to start with you again.
Hi, you can find me everywhere at Ask Dr. RENNEE. So YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm forgetting something, Pinterest. You can find me at Ask Dr. RENNEE. My website's askdrrenee.info, because I'm a resource for information, but I did put the link in there. I did a whole blog post about my weight loss journey, and that blog post was from, I think, August, September. So it needs to be updated. I'll update it. But and I put the link for the bottle, and the link for the bottles in that website, in that blog post as well. But yes, this is my best friend. It's 21 ounces, this one. So I drink 6.5 of these a day.
Awesome. Laura.
So I am working on increasing my social media presence. It's so funny. Again, I was like, oh, I'm just going to do my therapy thing and not think about it. And then within the last 2 years, I've been called to do more speaking and engaging. And so I've got to figure that part of it out. But I think what I would like to say is that if you are looking for additional support around your mental health and don't know where to go, one, outside of looking at Silence the Shame, and I would, if you haven't checked out the website and done a wonderful deep dive, please go and look because it is fantastic. I would also recommend looking at NAMI, which is NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness.org. They have done an incredible job of really beefing up their content, and they have content specific to Black communities and mental health and mental illness. And so that's a great place to get information. Whereas Google is not your friend if you have a hangnail and you don't know what's wrong with it because you'll think your hand is falling off. Google is a great tool when it comes to learning more about mental health and wellness. So use Google for the good. And I think I would just say, you know, again, we don't have to wait until we're in crisis. I think our communities are, we've done that out of necessity. We've done that because people have ignored us. We've done that because we didn't have the resources, but things are changing, right? Things are changing. So if you have access to care, but just don't know how, or you're wondering if it's okay, it is okay. If you have insurance and then that's wonderful. If you don't, there are still services, and you don't have to suffer just because you think you can, right? We have very high thresholds for tolerance and pain, and we don't have to have thresholds so high so that we can take care of ourselves before we go over that tipping point. You know, yes, suicide is on the rise, and especially in our communities at an alarming rate. We have to take that seriously. We have to support each other. We can talk about it, and we can survive and we can thrive. So that would just be my plug, is to please look at your mental health and wellness as something that is just as important as your physical health or your spiritual health or your financial health. And if you ever have any questions, I can be found on lauramorse.com, and you can ask me questions. I'd love to give information around that.
Awesome. And Danielle.
In regards to food access, if you're in Atlanta, community farmers market and the freshwater markets are a great avenue, as well as the food bank, Atlanta Community Food Bank. And if you're not in the Atlanta area and in another state, just, you know, Google your local food bank, so that I'm sure that they have organizations or even, you know, a church or a nonprofit location that will be able to assist you in whatever it is you need for yourself or your family. In regards to me and how I can be found, I write children's books. So I have a Instagram called Hello Legendary Press. And those books are geared towards things that we just talked about: fresh fruits and vegetables, farmers markets, gardening, things like that. I don't have personal social media. So the only thing I have is for my publishing agency that does my books. And again, that is Hello Legendary Press. And you can find me on all social media under that.
Awesome. So wonderful wealth of information. I do encourage you all. We will be sending out some resources for you all. So you'll have this contact information to connect with these folks, and just to learn more. Just remember to really take time, save a life, silence the shame on poverty, on grief and loss, on weight loss. Let's just be open and more intentional about our goal setting and about healthy living. So thank you all, and I hope everyone have a wonderful rest of evening. Thank you all.